Mary, thanks so much for coming onto the show. Everyone was just enthralled with your work and how you are taking these sometimes discarded pieces of textiles and then bringing them a new life in a new quilt.
So thank you for having me.
But we wanted to touch on another aspect of your life, which is being a quilt appraiser.
Okay.
And how does one go about becoming a quilt appraiser?
Well, the appraisal process itself is usually a 3 to 5 year course of study. You initially take coursework the certification is through American Quilt Society, and the classes are only taught in Paducah now. So during Quilt Week, you go and you take a 3-day course, and it literally gives you all of the background information and sets the path that you need to take in order to become certified. At that point, many people say, well, that was interesting, but I don't want to do that. So it's just an idea of what you need to do, and if that was something that would make your heart sing. From there, it's mostly self-study. You work with to learn as much as you can about 3 different aspects. You have to learn about the antique quilts and the fabric dating. You learn about contemporary quilts and cost of new construction, and you also learn about the art quilt market. Artists that are working in the medium on a regular basis. So you have to be able to be fluent in all 3 of those mediums. I came from a history background, so the history part was easy. It was learning all the art quilters that was more difficult for me, whereas others have come from the art quilt world, and so they find some of the other courses of study a little more difficult. But you figure out what you need, and then you take appropriate classes, or you mentor with other appraisers. We literally, it's kind of strange, you train your colleagues. When you feel you're ready, you have a written test that you take, and it's rather extensive. If you are chosen, if you pass the written test, then you're chosen to come to Paducah and have your oral exam. And so you actually do verbal appraisals on quilts in front of a panel, and then they decide if you are ready to become certified, or if there's additional things that you might need to work on. So it's an intensive process, but as an AQS appraiser, I know that every other person who comes behind me has had to meet those same standards. It's interesting to me that less than 10% of the people that ever start those courses ever finish and become appraisers, become certified appraisers. There's less than 100 of us in the US and Canada.
And so do you specialize in a particular area? So let's say, for example, you do vintage quilts from a time period. Is it that form, or is it anybody calls you up and says, I would like for you to appraise my
You need
quilt?
to be able to appraise all of those, but we within our community, if someone comes up with a Baltimore album quilt that I'm not familiar with some of the pieces, I know of experts within our appraisal community that I can go and ask. The same with the art quilt world. I mean, there are certainly people that specialize in certain things, but as an appraiser, you have to be able to appraise all of those. And some of the things that we need appraisals for, okay, if you're sending things through the mail, absolutely you need to have those pieces appraised. If you are divesting of an estate and you're choosing to donate specific quilts to nonprofits, the IRS requires that there be an appraisal done within 60 days of donation if you want to deduct that amount from your taxes. If you are, if you want it for insurance purposes, the insurance company wants to know, what would we have to pay to replace this piece with like in kind? In their mind, it's a blanket, and you can get those for $49.99 at Walmart, unless you have documentation that says that it's worth X amount.
So do you as appraiser physically go to their house, or do they send you a quilt? How does that?
I encourage them not to send them through the mail, especially because if they're sending them to be appraised, they haven't been appraised yet, and we may lose that. So I try to connect them with someone local in their area. Most of us as appraisers go to different shows. Shows will book me to come and appraise there. At many of the major shows, Houston, the AQS shows, MQX, all of them have appraisers on staff, or appraisers that they contract to come and be available at those big shows. I do appraisals in my home on a regular basis. So clients will call, and I will make arrangements, if I'm home, for them to come, and we look at their pieces. If someone has a large collection, I will go to them, but usually that's on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you so much. That is great information.
Oh, thank you.